Hi everyone, it's Ken here. In my last video, I put my entire CNC workshop up for sale so that I could upgrade to larger machines and take my hobby to the next level. I'm certain that in the video I specified that I was looking for a local buyer so that someone could just show up with a truck and pick up the machines. However, the first offer I received was from Chris, who happens to live in New Zealand. The reality is, his offer came within hours after my posting the video, and within the next few days I had quite a few offers, and actually all but one of them were for more money than I had even asked for the machines. But anyway, Chris seemed like a nice guy, and he was willing to pay for the shipping and the packing, and anyway, I packed everything up, and by now, hopefully, it's in New Zealand. So in this video, I'm going to detail the arrival of the new machines and some of the setup, and then take you on a tour of my new shop. So let's get started. The first truck arrived with the first two pallets. These contain the mill and the stand for the mill. So, first step was to start unpacking, unboxing, and piling up all the waste material. I borrowed a pallet jack from a friend. You really can't do this without one. And as is true every day, another package arrived from Amazon. My friend Bill came over to help me get the stand in place. And now I was left with the fun job of leveling it. And if you know anything about a Tormach machine, you'll realize that I've got it 90 degrees out of whack. So when I finish this insane leveling job, I'm going to have to do it all over again. Now the next pallet came. And this one was a doozy. All of these boxes on top are attachments and tooling for the Tormach mill. This is a some assembly required project. It is amazing how many parts you have to add to the mill to get it complete, if you will. So here I am trying to organize this stuff and figure out what half of it is. Now my buddy Jensen came over to do some of the hard work of unboxing these things. They really are. There is no shortage of nails holding these things together. And for the first time, we can see the mill. We get it into the shop, and now my friend Bob shows up. And Bob is the kind of friend that everybody needs. He's the kind of guy that no matter... He's never seen a project like this, and it doesn't matter because he makes it seem like he's been doing it all of his life. So he gets out his Sawzall, and he starts cutting through the packaging. And see, Tormach understands that this is a personal CNC machine, and so they supply all sorts of nice things that you're going to need, like lifting hooks and... You know, we rented the engine hoist that you see here, but all of the chains and that piece that spans, these are all designed to lift the mill, at its center of gravity. And Tormach really does a great job of making this such that, the home machinist can, set up something as complicated as a mill. So we, wiggled it into place, and once you get the bolt holes lined up with the stand, it's just a matter of, building the enclosure, which, believe me, is a two-man job. One guy doesn't have enough hands to hold up all these pieces. And you would think that they would have pre-drilled all the holes that you need, and while they have drilled some of them, there are quite a few that they haven't. And what I find particularly humorous is that they supply drill bits and taps so that you can sort of do this on your own. Well, anyway, we worked for a while on that, and then the third truck showed up, and this one had the lathe. Now this was amazing, and I have to, hats off to UPS Freight, because Grizzly shipped this thing on a pallet that could only be lifted with a forklift, and clearly I don't have one. UPS called me and explained what was going on, and then they offered to, reconfigure the pallet so that I could do it with a pallet jack, and they did not charge me for that, which is just incredible. So Jensen's back to work here unpacking this big guy, which is 1,400 pounds, by the way. It's quite the lathe. Now we can see the lathe for the first time. Now, I slowed the video down here because this big chunk of metal back here, that is the tailstock, and whoever packaged this thing did not connect it properly. So it jumped off the lathe bed during shipping and lodged itself up against the backsplash. And you can see me here. I'm checking to make sure that there's no damage to the ways or anything. There was a dimple put in the backslash, but that's not going to hurt anything. So fortunately, there was no real damage. It's just unfortunate that they didn't properly secure the thing. Once I was certain that everything was okay, we went back to the fun job of unpacking. Now it's time to get the lathe in place, and although Tormach supplies everything you need, Grizzly doesn't supply anything that you need. So the first thing we had to do was reconfigure this pallet. And take the secondary step out. And if you noticed, Bob was in there with a tape measure. We realized that this pallet is too wide to get the engine hoist around. So, once again, Bob makes it look like he's done this a million times, and he just starts cutting and pulling, and then he gets the Sawzall out, and he makes the pallet smaller and cleans up the mess. And, the next thing you know, we can fit the engine hoist around it. But the next trick is, again, they don't give you any of the lifting equipment. So I had to buy two 1-inch diameter steel rods to stick through these holes here. That was $100 I'll never see again. And then, fortunately, because we had the lifting equipment from the Tormach lathe, we repurposed that and hung it up on the engine hoist, and Bob had some extra chain, and one way or another, we figured this out. But keep in mind that this Grizzly expects you to have a forklift to move this lathe around, and, well, clearly I don't. So once we got it all hooked up, it's a matter of wielding 1,400 pounds in the air on an engine hoist that's only rated at 1,200, by the way. Once we got it up in the air, we got the pallet out of the way. And then here's another thing. I mean, a lathe has to be perfectly level. Grizzly does not supply the leveling feet. I had to get those from McMaster. So we just connected them while the lathe was up in the air. And now I'm making sure that it's exactly where I want it, And now the lathe is in place. So let's get the waste material out of the way and get back to work on the enclosure for the mill. Once again, we're drilling and tapping holes here, and although Tormach tells you where to put this thing, their instructions are wrong, and if you followed them, you'd be drilling right through shelves, and you'd never be able to connect it. So, the old adage of measure twice and drill once certainly comes into play here. But this is the bracket that's going to hold the monitor arm, which you can see us assembling now. It's actually a very nice arrangement because you can swing the monitor around wherever you need it. Now making sure that the mill is exactly where we want it, because we're not going to get to move it again after this. Now it's a matter of reading these instructions and saying, what did they mean by that? Anyway, it's the next day now, and all my friends have left, and I'm trying to organize and arrange things because I have a lot of work to do. Everything you see on that workbench is an accessory of some sort that has to be attached to the mill and, connected and made to work. So for the next couple of weeks, I'm pretty much on my own, assembling the mill and, getting it all tuned up. And as you can see me struggling here, a lot of this would have been easier with a friend around to have an extra set of hands. But this job in particular would have been easier with two people because the monitor is rather awkward, and it's got to be connected with these 4 holes here. And well, I struggled quite a bit, but I'm persistent. I finally got it to work. And then for the next few days, I just kept adding parts and adding parts to the machine. There are quite a few of them, which you'll see later in the video. This is often what it felt like as I was setting up the shop. I was reading manuals, I was watching YouTube videos on these machines, I was calling tech support. All of this was just trying to figure out how these machines worked and what I had to do to get them set up properly. Trust me, it's a lot of work. But once I got everything set up, and that includes leveling the lathe to within 5/10,000ths of an inch in each direction, it was really sweet to be able to just sit back and take a look at what I'd accomplished. So now I'm going to take you a little deeper into the details of why I purchased these machines and what went into some of the setup. The first decision I had to make was which mill to purchase. Now, Tormach makes 3 different mills in various sizes. I refer to them as the Mama Bear, the Papa Bear, and the Baby Bear. The Baby Bear, which is their 440, is their newest entry, and it truly is a personal CNC machine. It's about, its footprint is probably about half the size of the 770 that I went with, but it has a lot of the same features. I mean, it's got the same spindle, it uses the same tooling and such. But there are limits because of its size. For example, the rapid turn, which is the lathe attachment, just isn't available for it. So I just felt that was too small for me. So I went with the Mama Bear, which is the middle-sized one, the 770. I would have liked to have gone with the 1100, which is their largest one, but the dimensions of my shop just would have made that very difficult to do. And the 770 probably is plenty big for the type of work that I do. So that's how I made that decision. I wanted the features that I needed and, sitting in a footprint that I could safely manage. Choosing a lathe was a much more complicated decision because, while Tormach makes 3 mills to choose from, Grizzly makes about a zillion different lathes. And in some instances, the difference from one to the other is minimal. And yet, they sell them all. So the one I went with was, its model is the G0776. And I'll explain why I did that as we take a look at it. I mean, first off, it's plenty big, probably much bigger than any projects I have on the drawing board at this point, but who knows what I'm going to be making in the future. This is a 13 by 40 lathe, which means that you can turn something up to 13 inches in diameter and up to 40 inches long, which is plenty. It's called a gunsmithing lathe, and it's got some nice features for, well, if you're making guns and rifling barrels and so forth. But what that really means is that the lathe has a good amount of precision to it, and that was important to me. Obviously, it does threading, both imperial and metric. It's got power feed in both directions. And here's what made my decision for me. It's got a built-in DRO. And I can't imagine, after being in the CNC world, not having at least a DRO. Now, this is a manual lathe, but I find that even though I had a CNC lathe, a lot of what I do is done manually. So, the jump in price to a CNC lathe is insane. So, this made a lot of sense for me. And, as I mentioned, there is a CNC lathe attachment for the mill that I bought. So when I do need CNC, I have it at my disposal. But most of the lathe turning I do is manual. So this seemed like a good compromise. And then, when you saw all the crates that came with the mill in it, the lathe came fully assembled. The trick with that was moving 1,400 pounds around. But the mill was something different. The mill came in lots and lots of little pieces, and there are parts everywhere down here, none of which, none of this was actually on the mill. It all had to be connected, and of course, you have to, drill holes to connect all these things and tap them, and I went with a power drawbar, so that all of this had to be added to the mill, which meant taking out a lot of other manual pieces. And the fun thing is that everything has to get wired into this fun panel. I spent many hours over many days rewiring, wiring, adding things, moving things. The directions are pretty good, and there are videos of others struggling through and figuring out how to do this, but it's it's an adventure, connecting everything here so that, ultimately when you're all done, everything's under software control, which is certainly worthwhile. It's just that setting up a mill like this is a lot more work than I ever imagined. And then another thing I didn't imagine was how much garbage there would be left over after all of the unpacking was completed. The PathPilot interface that comes with the mill is incredible, and I went and got a touchscreen monitor for it, so I can just wander through all of the cool facilities on here just with a touch, and that's sweet. It really is. Jog shuttle, which I've set up so that I can put it wherever I need it when I'm working. I thought I'd take you on a quick tour of the shop. One of the things I had to do was get organized. This tool cart here used to hold every tool I needed for both my small mill and my small lathe. But the new equipment, the tools are so much bigger, and there are so many more of them, that I had to do quite a bit of redecorating and organizing. So I used hangers on the sides of my cart. The two machines are imperial and metric, and in some cases a single machine is both varieties. So anyway, I have a set of metric and imperial wrenches, and likewise with the Allen wrenches. Likewise, when you're working on the mill, you have a whole bunch of different tooling, and there's a tool table so you can enter the exact height of every tool, so you don't have to measure it every time you change tools. And the way all that's communicated is through a tool number. So I went, these wooden organizers come from Tormach, but I went and added numbers to each of the slots so I didn't have to keep counting, so I could easily find tools. The shelving over here in the far corner is just more accessories for the mill. There are lots of them. On the bottom shelf I have mostly measuring equipment. The next shelf, you can see I've got my vise on the far right. In the center is the fourth axis. And on the left, this is a new product from Tormach. It's called a rapid turn. You mount this on your mill and it turns the mill into a CNC lathe. And we're going to have some fun with that in future episodes. And then up on top I have more chucks for the lathe and tailstocks and 5C collets and all sorts of other goodies. So a lot of the work I did in setting up the new shop was just a matter of organization. You know, the lathe too has quite a bit of tooling, and if you look at the size of a chuck, I mean, if you remember the chucks from my small mill, you know, all 5 of them were smaller combined than just one chuck on here. And of course, it's not just one chuck, you have all sorts of them, and face plates and steady rests and lathe dogs. So again, a lot of the time I've spent over the past month or more has been in organizing the shop. I finally got myself a granite surface plate, which is incredible. When I realize, you know, how useful it is, I wonder why it took me so long to get one. And then the workbench is right in front of the lathe. I sit between the two of them when I'm working, and I'm using the drawers in the workbench to hold a lot of my lathe tooling, as you can see. So it makes it easy to access, and then, you know, keeps it out of the way as well. Although the new machines are much larger and take up a lot more space in my shop, I actually have more usable space now. And the main reason for that is because the workbench that you're looking at now is the one that was covered with all my desktop machines. And now it's back to being a workbench again, and having a nice big flat work area when you're assembling and measuring and so forth is an incredible advantage, and I just didn't have that before. If you look up high here, you can see that there is a air conditioning and cooling unit in my garage. Now, while some might think that's a bit frivolous, I live on the east coast of the U.S., and we essentially have winter and summer. So it's either hot or it's cold. And because this is my garage, before I put this unit in, there were many months in the summer where it was too hot to work in here, and just as many in the winter where it was too cold. And it doesn't make sense to have a workshop like this that you can't use whenever you want to use it. So, putting this unit in, as extravagant and crazy as it may sound to air condition and heat your garage, I went ahead and did it just so that I can do my hobby whenever I so choose. Because I make YouTube videos, I did take some time to set up some stuff just to make my life easier. One of the things I did was I just took an old arm from a desk lamp, and I took the light part off and put a camera bracket on it. So I can put my camera anywhere, and the nice thing is there are no tripods on the floor to get in the way, get tripped over and so forth. And then, so I can see what I'm doing, I have a monitor which is showing me what the camera sees. And this too, can be positioned anywhere, including facing the lathe when I'm working on doing videos on the lathe. So all in all, a lot of the time spent setting these machines up was getting organized, having YouTube sort of things that have nothing to do with machining. But the shop is finally organized, and what I'm doing right now is trying to figure out how to use these machines because, although they're very similar in concept to the little ones, they're bigger, stronger, faster. Your feeds and speeds are completely different. So I've been doing experimenting, trying to get some good recipes for the various tooling, and then once that's done, I'll get back into making my clock, which is the whole point. And then we'll get into some really cool stuff after that, because obviously these machines are capable of so much more than the small ones are. So I hope you've enjoyed this. I will see you all in the next clock video. Please like and subscribe so you can keep up with my future videos, and I'll see you all soon.